Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have discovered the UFC White House card. This is my second take on this because I had a massive bogey in my nose for the first one. So, years of abuse. So we do this, we react. Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje is the main event in Washington, D.C. for the Freedom Fights 250, the American-themed event at the White House. We'll go through it sort of line by line. I don't want to reveal too much because I want to ask Dana about this at the press conference. I don't think this was the original main event they had. I think yesterday that fight fell out. I think they had alternate plans for Ilia, and for whatever reason they had to pivot, and I believe they finally got something done with Ilia to accept the Justin Gaethje fight at the White House. I think if you look at the American theme of the whole event, I think you can say what you want about Justin's chances in that fight. Obviously, a lot of people have him as the underdog, quite a favourable, quite a significant one against Ilia. But if you're going to go for the whole American vibe and fucking fly over jets and all the rest of it, Justin Gaethje probably makes sense, right? So I think that fight is good. It's thematically correct. And let's say Justin, pulls off the upset. I mean, possibly one of the greatest moments in UFC history for the American fan base anyway. So I don't really hate that fight. And I think if you look at the realistic opportunities now, of course, that leads us on to the co-main event where John Jones wanted on this card. And I think it is a shame he won't be on there. I'm assuming that is due to negotiations and demands that were not met, not agreed upon. So he's not on the card. And I think that is a shame because that probably means we will never see John Jones fight in the UFC ever again. And I think he had one more in him, and I think him and Alex Pereira, obviously I always wanted the Tom Aspinall fight, but him and Alex Pereira would have been a blockbuster fight, would have been great for the White House, probably would have given an American the favourite chance to walk away with the victory, and it's sad, but I don't by any means hate Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight title. I think that's a big fight. I think obviously people are going to kind of poo-poo some of these fights because they're on the White House, and I think a lot of people had a big expectation in this card. But Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane, for Alex Pereira a chance to make a third title in the weight class he's not been in before, I think that's pretty exciting, and I think it's pretty cool that we get a moment of history, and I think Alex Pereira is a massive star, so to have him on the White House makes sense. The rest of the card, right? This was described to me by someone, a source, I guess you would say, in the UFC as like a fight for fight fans. Like this is a card for fight fans, and I think what they're doing is they're trying to use the attraction of the White House to get an audience that don't usually watch the UFC to tune in. And I think they've tried to book bangers. Basically, I think they've tried to book fights that are going to be really entertaining. And maybe that's one over technicality, technical. Like for example, Sean O'Malley, I feel like the fight for him was Corey Sandhagen, and I'm sad that that's not the fight. But maybe they feel like that's a technical back and forth for 3 rounds, so they wanted Zahabi to try and create some chaos. I don't know, but O'Malley is the right guy to have on the card. Would have been Sandhagen for me, but O'Malley should be on the card. Rufi versus Chandler is a banger that has first round over at Gregory Rodriguez. Robocop is here, so I have to stop talking. Chandler versus Rufi, I think is going to be fun. Chandler deserves to be on the White House, obviously, because of the whole Conor McGregor situation. At least they've got him on the White House. I do think Rufi's a tough fight for him, but it's very typical of Chandler to take a fight that is going to just be fireworks, right? I think it's the perfect. We'll get a backflip in there, either before or after, or even when he loses and then just runs one anyway. Steve Garcia versus Diego Lopez, man, they fucking love Diego Lopez at the UFC, don't they? They love it. That fight was a bit of a surprise to me when I heard it. I think Steve Garcia was friends with Charlie Kirk, so maybe there's a bit of that involved, but I think they probably look at that fight as a very exciting, just brawl for all fight. So that's probably their logic there. I don't know, but I assume they're expecting fireworks there. Bo Nickel versus Carl Dawkins is not. Listen, President Trump loves Bo Nickel. He was always going to be on it. I'm sad it wasn't the Colby Covington fight, but if you believe Nickel, that fight was turned down by Mr. Covington, so we're ended up with Bo versus Dawkins. DEI from President Trump's administration, maybe. I think people will complain about the card because I think everyone expects. I think the problem is when the UFC leave this sort of stuff out there for people to speculate on, people's imaginations is almost always grander than reality. Even when Dana's like, oh, making an announcement today, everyone gets this idea in their head that it's going to be much bigger than it is. I think people need to manage their expectations a bit more because the imagination's always greater than reality. I think on paper, this is an 8 out of 10 card. I think the fights will be good. I understand some of the dismay with a couple of the matchups, a couple of the choices I would not have made. But I actually believe in terms of entertaining nights of fights on a Sunday in front of the White House as a spectacle, I suspect this will probably be similar to a UFC 300, which again had people criticizing the main event before and stuff like that. I think it'll probably be a very entertaining night, and I think the UFC will enjoy rubbing that in people's faces after the fact. But we shall see. I got to go watch Renier Derrida now. And leave your thoughts. I don't really ever say this sort of shit. I never really even do these sort of videos, but I thought I'd react to the biggest news in the sport. Leave your thoughts in the comments below and so on. Judging by the comments on social, people hate it, but you never know.